Hey fellas, welcome to Guys in Grief, sponsored by Emma's Footprints and First Candle. We started this podcast for fathers like us that have experienced pregnancy or infant loss. You see, when we went through these life-changing experiences, we struggled to find resources that were specifically for men in support of navigating this grieving process. We're not doctors, we're not psychiatrists, we're three friends. We're grieving fathers that have been through the unthinkable and want to help others by talking about the unique and often undiscussed perspective of men that have experienced child loss. We welcome you to join us on this journey. Share your stories, the challenges, laugh with us, maybe shed a tear or two, and help each other as we navigate honoring our children, grief, supporting our family, and trying to find better days ahead. Let's get into it. Well, hey everyone, I'm Brad.
I'm Brian. Got it in.
I'm Brandon.
And this is Guys in Grief. Well played, guys. We got something accomplished already. That's a check win.
Oh gosh, that's great.
How we doing, fellas?
Better now, jeez Louise.
Yeah, we're doing good.
That was great.
It's
Strong
good to see
start.
you guys again.
Great
Likewise.
seeing you guys.
Good to start with
Oh,
smiles,
man.
especially knowing the G&G Q&A we're going to get in. We're going to make some
Oh,
different
man.
facial expressions over the next couple minutes.
Okay.
Guys, I got some really cool information for you. I love giving you
Okay.
data, stats every once in a while. So,
Definitely.
Brian, when we recorded your episode, which numerically is 4 episodes ago, if you guys remember, I told us that we had listeners in 9 different countries. What would you guess we're at today?
10.
You think I'd really do this if we got one more?
I'm
I
gonna
to
go
make it seem dramatic.
We actually lost 2 countries. People
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
no.
we are
13.
we are at 22 countries, fellas.
Oh man.
So I'll give you the list here. Obviously, the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, Trinidad and Tobago, Belgium, Germany, France, Thailand, Ukraine, Malaysia, Denmark, Estonia, Puerto Rico, Lithuania, Switzerland, Kenya, Italy, Morocco, Philippines, Ireland, and the United Arab Emirates.
Ooh.
So
I'm
thank
still
you.
shout out to my boy in
Wow, that is-
Estonia.
Yeah, we want to hear from all of you.
Puerto
Yeah.
Rico. Oh man.
I don't know about
That's
you guys,
awesome.
but never in a million years did I think this podcast would be listened to by dozens of people, let alone hundreds of people, let alone people in different countries, let alone 22 different
A
countries.
solid 10 folks from Erie,
Well-
Connecticut, and Buffalo. To be
Yeah,
honest.
I mean,
I'd have
when
been
you
ecstatic.
experience a loss, it seems so like local, and
Yeah.
you don't
Well,
realize
Yeah.
like it's a worldwide thing that happens, and it makes me so happy that there's people across the world listening.
Yeah, I remember last time on your episode, Brian, when I gave those stats, I remember saying grief is global and guys need this. And it's clear that is
Yeah.
continuing to be true. And again, we would love to hear from all of you. I mean, for every single listener, regardless of location, but especially those of you in different countries, it's an honor to have you. And thanks for listening to Guys in Grief. Brian, let's jump
Yeah.
into our G&G Q&A. We got a good one.
All right, this one's gonna be fun, fellas. So I want to tap into just a common emotion that we've heard over the last 8 episodes, and that's anger. And we've heard from a lot of our guests that they experienced anger, especially in the immediate aftermath of a loss. So I want to talk about that emotion with you two guys, and I want you to talk about, did you have that feeling of anger, and what was it towards? Was there a certain thing that just made you very angry, whether it was justified or not? So Brandon, why don't you jump into it a little bit?
I'm gonna, listen up, people.
Go off.
I'm not gonna go off, but I will say there is a moment where you have your own family sometimes pisses you off and makes you angry because it's the communication problem. and them not understanding that you are going through a really tough time. And again, the common phrase, "It's okay, you can try again." I'm ready to like throw you through a wall. Like there's nothing to
Yeah.
talk about. Like I just lost my daughter. There's nothing else to talk about at this moment. Um, but I think that's pretty much for like, to be honest with my family, like mom, dad. My mom said some weird things, which I'm still fighting every day. Just trying not to go off on her when I see her because of those type of statements that she said. She didn't mean it. I know she didn't. She just didn't know. But yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, do you feel like the anger was more prevalent early in the early stages after the loss? And like, do you feel like you kind of grew a
Yeah.
little bit past
I
it?
definitely grew. I mean, it was. I'm Brad will tell you. I'm quick to shut off family. I will shut them out
Not me.
immediately. Well, yeah, not you, B. But like, if family doesn't like, if they bother me, not bother me, but like, if I get like I'm gonna say the wrong thing. I'm just gonna not talk to you for a while. That's just how I am. I will shut it out, shut it down, and I'll move on with my life.
Yep.
But there's getting older, mature, and dealing with the grief and actually being able to communicate and talk about it and stuff like that. You kind of move past that moment and that anger feel, and I'm a lot better place than I was obviously back then.
How did you feel like you dealt with that anger? So you had it. Was it like, were you vocal about it? Were you like in
Oh my!
private cursing
I
people
told my
out or?
I told my family off immediately. No
Yeah.
bar, not even like hesitating. Like I had my biggest wing person next to you guys was my sister, who I communicated a lot through. But also, I called my family out right on site. That's one thing I didn't mind doing at all
Right.
because I put myself I'm an adult. I'm a grown man. I have children. You're gonna hear me, and you're gonna hear everything I'm saying. No interruptions. Like I'm not in the place of hearing your side of it. You're gonna hear me and why I'm upset.
Yeah.
And if they didn't like it, it is what it is. Like at that point, but we grew
Yeah.
past it.
Yeah. What
I grew
about you,
past
Brad?
it.
Yeah, I'm going to try my best to not, dominate the next 20 minutes here. I'll try to keep it brief. What is funny too was when we talked about this being the topic for GT and Q&A, I was like, I don't know how, do I have a lot of things that I was angry about? And then I started writing things down. I was like, fuck, I had a ton I'm angry about. Still is. I will preface it all. If you heard my episode, I have a tattoo of Beckham's the day we met Beckham on my arm. And one of the reminders of that is the power of forgiveness. And so I'm trying to, navigate that anger while also forgiving people that may not have shown up in the moments that I needed them to. So first thing that comes, we'll go top down, literally God, like my faith. We've heard faith a lot in these conversations. I completely removed myself from my faith for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
I literally cussed out God nonstop, way more than you would ever think. Even having those words come out of your mouth, and they came out a lot, and they came out on just even we were building a house and something went wrong there. I'm like, here we fucking go again, right? It all just felt this cascading emotion of where
Yeah, I
life
wrote that
was,
one down too.
Yeah, right. And so faith was a huge one. People who I expected to be there for me in those moments not showing up. There was a lot of anger there, and I had some really similar conversations as Brandon did. Letting people know how I felt in those moments for different particular reasons. We've talked a lot about the people that surprise you, that are there for you, and the equal surprise by the people that are not. And I had a lot of anger for some time, and navigated through that, and again the power of forgiveness. But there was people I thought would be there in certain moments that just were not, and that really hurt a lot.
Yeah,
the one more that I got real quick, if you don't mind, was with medical professionals. Literally, some things here. When we lost Ari, I think we hadn't even technically moved to Pittsburgh yet. We were living in Ohio. So Jessica's got a brand new doctor, a brand new OB that she's basically never met. And quite literally, when we got the news that when she went in and the heartbeat was not there for Ari, no phone call from the OB. We go through surgery to have a DNC. Never heard from her again. Like the lack of communication from the doctors in this horrible moment for us that continues to be a part of our life, just completely absent. We were reaching out for information. Like, we don't even know where to go. Like, yeah, fucking Google, but like, we're brand new in this city. We don't know who to reach out to, and the lack of communication, the lack of response. I mean, we were fucking furious on some of this stuff. So, this the support system that you think you have in your life, your faith, your close family and friends, and the medical community that's supposed to be there for you. There was moments of being let down in all three areas. And so a lot of anger permeated through Jessica and I during those days.
Yeah, faith, family, and football. And the Bills weren't winning a Super Bowl. So that hurt
them too.
Yeah, mad at them too.
No, it's interesting. My thing that I wrote down is interesting in the sense that I want to talk about sort of unexplained anger outbursts that I would have because I was grieving, and it wasn't specific at like a anger feeling or at somebody. It was just I was grieving. And in that moment, I would just be angry, and it didn't matter the situation, and it would come out at work. It would come out in social situations where, if I had a moment where I'd start thinking about the loss of Austin, and it would make me mad at whatever situation I was in. I'd be out with friends, and I'd be like, "What do you mean by that statement?" Just. Like a little bit of an outburst that was, now I realize it was because I was grieving, but I think it's important to say it's okay and normal to let out your emotions sometimes, and it comes through with anger. And Brad, you talked about yelling at a valet guy, like that was specific at moment in time when you're going through a loss, but like it comes out. Like you yell at an Uber driver, you yell at just people at work, a client. I'd be like, I'd almost hang up on people sometimes just because I was just mad, and it really was stemming, I think, from me just being sad and grieving. And it could be a client just talking about their kids and like how happy they are and what's going on. And it's okay. I don't know if it's okay, but it's normal, I think, for guys to just have these moments of just sheer, like, I'm mad right now. And sometimes it comes out, and
it makes a ton of sense.
It does. Hey, Brian, how did you evolve past that, or through that, I guess I could say?
I think that's one of the things over time, and it's why I wanted to join you guys on this podcast. Like I want to speak of it and tell guys that I have way less just anger moments. I still have it. And, I think the loss, there's some form of sadness and depression that I still have to deal with. And sometimes it comes out in anger, but it is far less. And, having additional children, and be like you, Brandon, you said a really good point. Like, you need to be a good father and good person for your younger children. And you don't want to come off as this like psycho lunatic that just yells at people because you're angry and grieving. It does take time, and it got better for me, but I would have a lot of unexplained outbursts at people that probably didn't deserve it at the time, but it happens.
It's such a good point. And we've talked so much on this pod about how we have to be the rock for our family. We have to be strong. We don't talk about bury it down, bury it down, bury it down. But then the reality is this shit fucking explodes in an emotion at some point in time. And normally when an explosion happens, it's usually not positive. And so the anger emotion finds itself rearing its ugly head. And then I'm with you. I would be sort of shotgun spraying anger at the the guy at the grocery store or at the gas pump or whatever.
Yeah, my landscaper, because he
Yeah.
like,
That's not where
missed
the
a
fucking
blade of
daisies go.
grass. What am I paying you for?
The
it's
mulch
just
is
like
on the pavement.
Yeah.
stupid shit. So
Yeah. So fellas listening, super normal, super relatable.
yeah,
Embrace it and then work through it, I think, is an important piece here.
yeah,
And especially
yeah.
with your spouse too, right? Because
Communicate.
there's a lot of those statistics about marriages having a lot of challenges through all this.
Yeah.
And I can imagine our anger emotion being a big component of that. So you got to work through that.
Yeah.
So we've got
Absolutely.
an awesome guest that we're really excited to welcome into the studio here. So come on in and join us. And I'm going to get this right. Eric Atstupenas. Did I get it right?
Ooh.
That's pretty good, right?
I think I got
That is it. Yeah, you got it.
Nailed
Nice
it
job.
on the
Hey,
first
what's going on,
try.
Eric?
Yeah. I'm just living and and trying to get through, just like all of us. So how you guys doing?
We're
well,
hanging in
man.
there.
We're happy to have
Cool.
you. Very happy to have you.
Well, I'm happy to
Eric,
be here. And yeah. No, I'm happy
go
to be
ahead.
here.
Go
I
ahead.
know that's kind of like a weird thing to say, but I am. I'm happy that you're doing this podcast because it's so important, and I really am. I'm honored to be here. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. And we've put it out there many times. We don't know the right adjectives or verbs or whatever to say most of the time, right? I said to you before we even started this, I'm excited to hear your story. That sounds weird. So don't give yourself too hard of a time if you use the wrong words every once in a while. I got to say, man, too, I'm looking back. Our very first episode launched January 4th, and our first email from you was January 7th at 8:07 a.m. And you gave us a lot of your story. And I'm so honored by that, as my point, that within 3 days of us existing, you reached out saying, I want to be a part of this. I want to share our story. So we are honored to have you. And I know there's a lot to talk about. Before we jump into all of that, we want to know about Eric. So, as I always stupidly say, who is your dad and what does he do? Where's home? What's work? What do you do for fun outside of work and personal family life? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So I live in a small town called Sutton, Massachusetts, which is just south of Worcester. I came from Massachusetts, went to school in Massachusetts, haven't really gone very far. And our family here where we live is just my wife and I. We have 2 dogs that are awesome and are a continuing source of joy in our lives. Apart from that, what I do for a living, I'm a lawyer. Specifically, I'm a police legal advisor, so that keeps me pretty busy.
Not a big deal.
Wow.
As you can imagine.
Yeah.
So little
Wow.
busy.
I'd imagine so. Yeah.
So that's always a challenge, but it's fun in a lot of ways because I kind of get to engage in like a non-traditional practice of law where like I don't have to just deal with like going into a courtroom and that stuff. I actually get to go to conferences and get up and present and try to take complex legal topics and try to make them approachable and understandable. And that's really where my passion is. I love teaching. I love working with people, and I love helping. And apart from that, my kind of my passions and what I do for hobbies has changed drastically since our loss. So I spend a lot of time now doing woodworking and crafts and drawing, and
it's therapeutic, right?
it really is. Yeah, it was really integral to my grief process. Is like, and I'll talk about how, immediately after the loss, I was like, I just need to start building shit. I just need to like do this project. I just need to start doing this,
Yeah.
And then apart from that, I spend a ton of time in the woods alone by myself because it's nice, it's peaceful, and
that was me.
Yeah.
So
camping.
Exactly. Yeah. Like getting into nature has been really, really healing. Turning to meditation, turning to some spiritual practices have been really helpful and healing. And then I've dedicated a lot of my time now to working with other lost parents, particularly lost dads. I work really closely with Empty Arms Bereavement Support out of Northampton, Massachusetts. Shout out to Carol McMurray over there, who's the founder. She's fantastic. And she's been really integral to our healing process. So just recently I've started doing facilitation for the dads group. And yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell, if you will. So
That's
I love
amazing,
it.
man.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's so
We will
great.
definitely shout them out on our social.
Cool.
And kudos to you for jumping in this space like we have. And it's going through what we've gone through ourselves is tough enough, but leaning in to help other men and honor your children through that it's pretty beautiful. So we got to know too, where'd you go to law school?
New England School of Law in Boston. That's actually
Amazing.
where I met my wife. She's a lawyer too. I like to say she's a smarter one. Everyone's like, you don't have to say that, right? I'm like, no, it's true. That's true.
Yes, you do. Yes,
This
you
He
do.
makes
is
you
Eric.
smart by saying she's the smarter one.
You
That's
darn right.
He's a good
Right.
husband. Yeah.
What kind of law does she practice?
Jeez. So she's a compliance attorney for, I'm going to get this wrong. But she works for pharmaceutical or biotech type companies. So she deals with the federal compliance laws, the stuff that I read, and it looks like gibberish to me. So yeah, she's
Wow.
she's
Me
smart.
too. Don't worry
She is
about it.
pretty
Me too.
I would love to be a fly on the wall of any of your arguments. I'm
Yeah,
I
sure
was
they're
just
all
about
like,
to say the same
well,
thing. Yes.
We have no
Well
legal
thought out.
conversations. None at all.
That's
None at all.
smart.
That's why it works.
P.S. If you
Guy.
got any of that wrong of what she does, just text us and we'll edit that shit out.
Please,
Don't
if you
worry.
could,
We'll
yeah,
make,
just
we'll
like
make you look good. Don't worry.
appreciate it.
So, Eric, take us back to 2020
Okay.
because I know obviously we want to hear about Hadley's story,
Mhm.
and that all came about in February of 21, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So take
You're
us
right.
back to 2020. We're in the midst of COVID.
Mhm.
You're starting to think about growing a family. You grow a family. Let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So for us, we started trying to have children prior to Hadley. It was about 4 years that we started. Nothing was working. We went through infertility treatments. We did IUIs. We did IVF. We went through a ton of transfers before finally we were pregnant, and it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm so excited. I remember getting a call from her and I was like ecstatic because it was the first transfer that I forgot about when the pregnancy test date was, because everything was just kind of crazy. And I get this call out of blue from her. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? I was like, so like ecstatic. Got home, found out that it was a little girl, and I was just over the moon. So everything, according to me, I was just living on cloud nine, right? Like I was so excited just talking about like how excited I'm going to be, a dad to a living child. And everything was good up until January 21st, 2021. And that was the 19-week anatomy scan, which is now we refer to as anomaly scan because that's really all they're looking for. But we didn't really know
Right.
that at the time. So, sure enough, it's COVID, so I can't go. She has to go by herself. She goes in, so I'm just on like FaceTime, just like on my phone, kind of watching in my office, seeing everything. I'm like, oh my God, there's my little girl. She looks perfect. She's beautiful. And they go through this whole process and they're not saying a word, right? They're not saying anything to me. So I'm like, all right, and she says, yeah, so apparently the doctor needs to review some stuff. He'll come back in, check everything out. Okay, cool. So I hang up, I head home, I'm waiting, not hearing anything from my wife, Jill. So I finally call her back. I'm like, what's going on? She says, I'm still waiting. I'm like, oh, that's weird, but all right. I don't know about this. This is my first time. I have no idea. So just hanging out and I'm waiting. And all of a sudden I get another call from her and she's in tears and she's crying. And I'm like, what is going on? She said, they said that something's wrong with our daughter's brain. And I'm like, wait, what? So I'm like trying to get this all in a context, figure out what's going on. And now I'm trying to have a conversation with the doc through the phone. And I'm like, doctor, like, what's going on? He's like, oh, there's something wrong with her brain. There's a lot of fluid on her brain, and he made a fatal mistake, I'll say. And, this kind of segues perfectly into anger because first he referred to my daughter in the past tense and said, what was it? And he said it instead of her. And I was like, Papa Bear mode, pissed off right off the bat. I was like, first off, she is very much alive. She isn't a was. She still is alive today in my heart. And it was just a matter of like, whoa, wait a second. He's like, oh, have you thought about, like terminating the pregnancy? Hold the phone, dude. Like
this isn't like signing up for fucking car
Yeah.
insurance.
Right,
Like, have you
exactly,
thought
dude.
about changing your plan? Like,
Right. I'm like, can we maybe get some information before we, talk about something this serious? Well,
Oh my
we can
God.
do an amnio. And the guy was just a jackass, right? So he was just awful. He was very cold to her. Luckily, he did the amnio, get that all done. And he's like, yeah, she's going to have a lot of brain malformations. You should be looking at, potentially terminating. I'm like, okay, we got to get some deets first before we go down that route, right?
It's not your decision, dude.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry. I'm pissed.
right.
Yeah.
Right now.
Thank you.
Good thing we saved the anger G&G Q&A for Eric.
Oh my
Kinda
because we're
perfect.
fuming for you,
Perfect.
man.
Thank
I'm
you.
so
I'm sitting
yeah.
backstage listening to you talk about the Q&A. I'm like,
Yeah.
tag me in, coach. I got this.
I'm like,
What?
So that
Fuck
was
that
like
guy.
our first night. She comes home. I'm just sitting in the nursery screaming into like, what should have been her nursery. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is going on?
yeah.
So we spent the whole night. We're like, all right, we gotta, tomorrow morning, we're going to get all of our ducks in a row. We're going to get all the information we can. We're going to drive to there's a really good hospital in Boston for children. We're going to go there. We're going to get additional information because this is not enough. We need more. So we kind of like spend the next day coordinating a lot. We were able to get an appointment scheduled at that hospital for that next week. So it was like that Thursday. We go in, we do an MRI, we do an ultrasound. And then the next day, again, COVID, the doctor wouldn't meet with us in person. So we had to have like a Zoom telehealth type thing on a Friday. And we're sitting in this room before this computer. We have our parents kind of on the sideline over here just to hear everything that's going on. And the doctor's like, it looks like she has ventriculomegaly, aqueductal stenosis, and something that they believe to be rhomboencephalosynapsis. Now, I don't know anything about that, so I'm trying to write it all down, figure out, okay, like, what does this mean? Try to Google some of this stuff. And the doctor's like, her prognosis is likely poor, but it's a spectrum. We can't really say. I'm like, okay, but what's that mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, I need more data before we can make a decision. So they said, why don't you take a weekend to think about, any questions that you have? So we took that weekend. We came up with what we call our 20 questions. The answer to any one of these questions, if it's yes about your child, then it's not good. And like we were asking, like, okay, 100%, I quit my job. I stay at home. I dedicate my entire life to taking care of her. We downsize everything. Like we just dedicate our lives to taking care of her. Will she improve? Will she live? Will she be able to have have a life where she'll understand what's going on around her, be able to have a meaningful life to her, not to anyone else. And so we get together again with that care team. And now they're like, well, it's really difficult to determine. It's kind of, it could be mild, it could be severe. We don't really know. So I'm like, so you're saying like there's a 30% chance it's mild, 30% it's moderate, 30% it's severe. Like, so really we're just rolling the die here. Like, I can't do that. So we're like, okay, still not good enough. So I started doing some research. My mom came up with this doctor down in DC. And so I just called repeatedly until I got through. I was like, look, unfortunately, we're on a timeline because in Massachusetts, we have until 24 weeks gestation in order to terminate if we have to. So we kind of need to get as much information as we can. And luckily, our perseverance paid through, and they were like, yeah, you know what? Come on in. And they're like, could you drive down? We're like, no problem. We'll drive down. It's like 8 hours. Doesn't matter. We'll drive down. Not a problem. So we drive down. They do another MRI. They do another ultrasound. And I remember like we're getting ready to go in to meet with the team. And they kind of put us in like this little room just to be separate. And we're just hanging out. And I remember laying down on Jill's like lap. And I felt Hadley, my daughter's name is Hadley. I felt her kick me in the head. And it was kind of like her telling me, hey, Dad, wake up. You're going to need to listen. And
that's
so
incredible.
we went into the meeting, and they didn't normally meet with people, but they met with us in person. And I'll always remember that doctor. We had the doctor who was like, all he did was maternal fetal neurology. We had a head neurologist in there. We had an amazing geneticist. We had a whole bunch of people in there. And he told us, he's like, look, he was surprised that she was still moving around and kicking. And he said, honestly, her diagnosis is grim. Her prognosis is grim. She's probably not going to make it to term. And if she does, she's never going to leave the hospital. She's going to undergo immediate procedure and go through procedure to procedure, none of which is going to help her get better. It'll just keep her alive. She's going to have like uncontrollable seizures. She's never going to know who you are. She's never going to be able to eat, breathe, do anything on her own. And all she's going to do is live in pain and suffering for her entire short life. So he said, you have two options. And this is what lives with me every day. And every day I make this decision over and over again. Usually it's in the shower. I don't know why, but for some reason, that's where I do a lot of thinking. But make this decision over and over again. And this doctor's words live with me. And he said, you two can either bring her into this world, and all three of you will know nothing but pain. Or the two of you can decide to release her and let her go. And she will know nothing but your love, but you two will live with pain the rest of your life, but she'll know nothing but love. And so we knew what we had to do by the time we left there. So we immediately put into plan a birth plan. We reached out to the hospital back home to kind of coordinate everything. My wife really wanted to go through induction and delivery, which I was grateful for because we were able to go through that process. So she went in at 23 weeks gestation. She went in on February 18th and started going through labor. And sure enough, she gave birth to our daughter, Hadley Maeve Atstupenas, on February 19th, 2021 at 2:08 p.m. We consider ourselves incredibly fortunate that she was actually born alive. And when she was born, she was placed immediately on Jill's chest. And I looked down and I was like, hey, I think she's still with us. And the doctor didn't believe me. And the nurse checked her heart and was like, yeah, she's here. And I was like, oh my goodness, she stuck around for us. Like, she stayed with us. And so Jill's like stroked her cheek and she moved her little mouth. And I was like, oh my God, my heart just like melted. And for me, one of the things that, like, as a dad, when I found out she wasn't going to be with us, going to be able to stay with us, like, one of the things I kept thinking about was like, I'm never going to feel my little girl like hold my hand or like squeeze my finger. I don't know why, but I went to that and I was like, I would like miss that so much. And I was so angry about being cheated out of that, having that stolen from me. And sure enough, like, I put my hand in my finger in her hand and she squeezed it. And that lives with me every single day. That to me was awesome. Like her saying, Mom and Dad, you did what you need to do. I love you. I'm here. And she left shortly thereafter. So we spent the next 48 hours in the hospital with her. We brought a book with us, Ellie Ballerina, it's called. Brandon, I think you had shared that about the significance of the elephant in a prior episode. And
absolutely.
So there's this little Ellie Ballerina that she's got. So we brought that to the hospital. We read the book to her. We read books to her. We swaddled her. We did like all the things that we could do possibly within that short period of time. And it was like, just trying to like create a lifetime of memories in like 2 days. Right. And then at the end of the 2 days, you're like, what the hell do I do? Like, how do I leave? How do I possibly like walk out of the hospital?
What do I do now?
Yeah. So that was its own like process, trying to figure out like, what do we do? We were fortunate in that the same nurse that took us in on the 18th was there on that last day. And we had asked for like, give us a sign that it's okay to leave. Cause I don't know how I'm supposed to leave. Like how am I supposed to walk away from you? And so that nurse walked in, we're like, bingo, like, okay, I think we need to leave today. She says, yeah, you really should. And here, I'm going to help you do that. I'm going to take good care of her, make sure, she's well looked after. And then we're able to head out. Then it was like a matter of going into planning mode. I went into like, I think a lot of us go through this is like, I just need to keep busy. I need to start planning things. My wife's healing from delivery, and we didn't know at the time, but she also had retained placenta, something that she's gone through twice on 2 occasions. So she's had to go in a couple times to have that removed. She's had additional complications, but that was all in the future. Another thing I'm angry about. But yeah, it was all a matter of just trying to plan and like create some sort of memorial service for her to share with very few people, because it was middle of COVID, the amount of joy that she was able to bring to our lives in a short period of time. So that's the story of our little girl.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And that was unbelievably powerful. I think you may know, we also terminated for medical reasons.
Right.
And so, I very much connect with your story. I got so many questions that I want to ask on that, but let's go in sequence here.
Sure.
Those, 48, 72 hours you get back home, you just said, I don't know how to leave this hospital without Hadley. And so then you go home, and what was that like for you all?
For me, I was numb. It was a matter of like, Jill was still very much healing physically. And I was like, okay, I know within like the next week we need to have a service. So I need to start planning that. I need to start getting everything ready. It needs to be the best thing that it can be for her. So for me, it was all about stay busy, and don't process shit. Just pack it down, ignore it, and keep busy. So that was where I was primarily focused during that time.
This is something that I struggled with a lot, and I don't know if you did or not. Terminating for medical reasons has a lot of stigmas around it, and it's a complex conversation. And telling people, how'd you guys go about that, and how is that for you even still today, and having that conversation?
So I'll admit, early on, the only people who really knew were our parents and some of the people in my office. I have a really small, close-knit office, and they were really supportive through the entire process. We told a couple friends too when we were considering that decision, because we had a little bit of time, and it was a matter of like, it was kind of like a gut check for us. Like, are we monsters? Is this like, are we like, you hear all of these things, you hear the stigma attached to it. And it was a matter of getting that reassurance from others to say, no, the decision you're making is purely out of love. And like, if you decide to bring her in with all of the information you have, you like, why would you do that to her? So that was initially where we were. We shared very lightly for the first year. But once we actually had her service on March 5th, my birthday's on March 6th. So for my 6th birthday, for my birthday the following year, right? Yeah, it was a leap year, right?
That was great.
Look good, right? But for that next year's birthday, I decided to do a Facebook donation for Empty Arms. And I posted our story for the very first time out there in the public and decided to go live. I think Jill and I kind of kept it to ourselves for that first year just to help process ourselves. And also, like, we're in protection mode, right? Like, if somebody starts saying some stupid shit to us, like, we're already pretty fragile. But a year out, I'm ready to fight. if you decide to come at me.
Literally, Jessica and I had the exact same conversations, Eric.
Right?
I was actually, I'm resolute in our decision, right? We made the best decision for Beckham, and certainly you feel the same with Hadley. But you never know what stupid shit people are going to say to you. We had a whole podcast about that too. And in those moments, if somebody made the wrong comments around this, I don't know if I'd be here. I might be in prison for a while. So I know exactly how you feel. What was the reception? And sorry, Brian and Brandon, I'm kind of dominating a little bit here.
No,
I connect so
man.
much with
this
this.
is awesome to
I
hear your
agree.
connection.
Once you put it out there, what was that reception like when people started to understand your story more?
100% supportive.
It's
Not
amazing.
one person said anything remotely like criticizing our decision. Everyone was incredibly supportive. We were able to raise a lot of money for the organization, which was great. And we've just kind of taken that and carried that forward. Since then, I've been on other podcasts. My wife has been on other podcasts. We've become very big advocates for women's rights and getting out and joining marches and rallies here in Massachusetts. Things that we never thought we'd be doing, but here we are. And we've gotten very comfortable telling our story. And now I'm at a place where if somebody were to judge me, I think I'd feel bad for them. I would also feel almost happy that they never have been in the position that they've needed to make the decision themselves. Like almost like, aw, isn't that cute? You never had to make such a difficult decision.
Poor,
I was like,
you little ignorant
Poor
soul.
little
must be
ignorant
so
soul, you.
nice. Yeah, like must be so nice being so naive.
Oh,
But,
gosh, yes.
yeah.
Can I just comment on how impressed I am that you and your wife were so active so quickly? I mean, this isn't a long time ago that this happened.
Yeah.
I mean, can you talked a lot about being a planner and what how it almost kind of numbs the grief because you're doing something and it keeps your mind. Is that what it was, or did it take some time to say, okay, I don't want to be sad anymore. We need to be more proactive. We need to talk about it. We need to join podcasts. Cause I'm really impressed with how quickly you've just involved yourselves into the grief community and been able to talk about it.
Sure. No, thanks, Brian. So we just had the 2-year anniversary this year. I'll say it ebbs and flows. Like when we were first in the loss, like right after the loss, I was like, keep busy, get involved, help others. But that was my dumbass not like taking the time to process my own shit. And so I was focused way too much elsewhere. And I think something inside of me knew that. I think others knew that. They were like, yay, that's great. But, take time for yourself.
How is that for you and Jillian there, by the way? I'm so sorry to cut you off, but I want to zoom in on that because I was the exact same. And that it took me a minute to recognize that I was doing all of that to sort of stifle my own grief. And I was not connecting with my wife in the same way. Did you have similar experiences there?
Yeah, in different ways. So, I think you're right on target, Brad. I think for Jill and I, she was more like in the focus of like she's dealing with her stuff and she's looking at me like, why are you not in the same place I am? And I know I've heard you guys talk about this before that like we grieve differently than our partners and our spouses, right? And that's cool. But she's looking at me like, what the fuck? Like, why are you like let's go do this, let's go do that. That had consequences for me about like 6 months out, because about 6 months out, I hit a brick wall. And that's when my therapist finally looked at me and she's like, Eric, I think you seriously need to look at like going on some medication because you are seriously depressed. And I was like, you know what? I'm in the darkness right now. I can't necessarily see that, but I appreciate that you are looking at me from an objective perspective. Let's do it. And so I did. I went on antidepressants for a little while to help me get through. And through that process, and also turning to like some deep meditation practices, I started turning within, looking within, focusing on myself, spending a lot of time in nature, just getting in my own head and started focusing on like, oh shit, there are things I haven't processed and I've just kind of repressed. And now I'm trying to pull them out and deal with them and start looking at them with a fresh set of eyes. And I still find that even though like, I'm a part of dad's groups, I'm very much I'm not there to like teach anybody anything. We're just facilitators. We're just holding the space. So when you guys tell your stories, that triggers things in my mind. That brings me back to a part of my story maybe I've repressed. And I'm like, oh shoot, I need to maybe dig into that a little bit more. I need to, explore the emotions, explore this anger, explore this sadness. Or sometimes I find that with like triggers, random triggers for no reason. One of the ones that I had fairly recently is I have not been able to work out for like 2 years since we lost Hadley. Before when my wife was pregnant, I was working out like a beast. I'm like, I got to be in the best shape to be able to be like the active dad,
Super
to take care of
dad.
my little
Yeah.
girl. Yeah, right. I was like, so I was doing that, and I just couldn't get back into it until finally, like not the other day, it was in December actually. I was downstairs and I had my little gym set up and I'm doing deadlifts, and I'm in the middle of doing deadlifts. And all of a sudden on my music, it was a song, You Should Be Sad by Halsey comes on. And I just start crying, and I'm crying while I'm trying to work out. I'm like, I am sad. What the hell? I'm like,
Thanks,
why am I
Halsey.
crying?
Yes, Halsey,
I know. So I'm
this
like,
is
why am I
great.
crying? I'm crying because the last time I was working out, Jill was pregnant, and I was getting ready to be a dad to a living child, and that's not happening now. And so every time those things happen, when those triggers happen, I just kind of have to dig back down and, look at it and be like, why am I feeling this way? What's the source of it? And what do I need to do to continue to work on my healing process? I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe I just kind of danced around. But
No, it does.
I interrupt some of the question too, so my bad.
I'm curious to know, you touched on therapy a little bit, and we haven't really talked a lot about it in our podcast.
Literally reading my head, yes.
Yeah. How did that work for you? Because I know my wife and we went to therapy right after, and I think it was just the therapist we had, but I did not connect. I kind of had this feeling like, you don't know what we're going through. Like, you didn't go through a loss. So it was like really hard for me to talk to just objective people. But tell us a little bit about how it worked for you. And
So we reached out to find a therapist immediately after we found out something was wrong with Hadley. We're like, okay, we're going to need some help through this process. I'll say we're very lucky and fortunate that we found and connected with a therapist, because therapists were really hard to find during the pandemic. And then to find somebody you connect with, because I can't tell you how many times, Brian, like I talk to other dads that are like, I can't find somebody I connect with. I get that.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly difficult to find that connection. We had a great connection with her. And we do therapy together. It's all by like telehealth type thing. So we sit right here, have the conversations, and it's been really cool. I look forward to it, even when it's like the day of, and I'm like, oh shit, we got therapy today. I'm like, when I get into it, it's good. And what's even better is the conversation it creates afterwards, because you create so many different things. Like in that safe space that you have with your partner or with your therapist, you explore some pretty heavy and deep shit that is like, later you look at your partner and you're like, hey, can we reconnect on that and talk about that? And you dig into some really, really interesting things. And through the process, I found that it's been really healing, not for just like this trauma, but other things that we go through in life. And you start thinking about like all the other stuff that you repressed, all of the other things that you just kind of like pushed off and like ignored. So now, I like to say there's two types of people in the world. There's those who need therapy and get therapy, and those who need therapy and don't get therapy. I think we all need someone to talk to nowadays. It's just like,
you ever seen those T-shirts that say "therapy is dope"?
Yeah.
You ever seen those? And I'm like, oh, those T-shirts are like, before all that, my T-shirts are whack. I'm like the biggest spokesman for that. Like, I love the fact that you brought up, like it brought you and your wife, you and Jill doing therapy together. Yeah. Brought up like other things that you're like, oh, I forgot all about that.
Oh yeah,
and you're presenting, and now you guys are having that, like, out of counseling, out of therapy conversation, and it like makes you guys mesh even, closer just on your relationship as a whole. I commend you 125% on that. If for our viewers or listeners, I'm like going crazy over here, like yes, because it's like it was so. I mean, for the African American community, therapy has not been one of those things where it's been talked about, and until you do it, I mean, now it's becoming more of a thing within the African American community. But man, I speak highly of it. You find a dope therapist that is with you, and you guys rock. I speak volume for it, man. Kudos, awesome.
Thank you
Eric,
so much, Brandon. I appreciate that.
You're
Can I
welcome,
ask you
my
one that
son.
might feel a little out of left field here, and I hope I'm on to something, but it's for good reason. So I know, you correct me, you don't have living children at this
Correct.
point, right?
Yeah, we don't. Yep.
So I joined, you may follow the Sad Dads Club on Instagram. They're fantastic. We're going to have them on the pod here soon. I joined their open hour just last week, actually. And there was a lot of dads on there that started talking. And we've had sessions where we talk about the power of your living children and how they've helped us through therapy, how they've helped us through our loss. And I was astonished by the amount of men that talked about the power of their dogs. And you talked about having 2 dogs right at the very beginning of this thing. I don't know if I'm stretching here a little bit or if I'm opening up an opportunity that nobody's asked you about before, but I was blown away. That was one of the first things that I told my wife Jessica about. I'm like, I almost felt like I was neglecting Dakota the whole time. We've got a beautiful, wonderful dog. And I'm like, I have no clue. She could have ran away during all of this and I wouldn't have known. And I don't know, am I onto something or am I way off?
No, I mean, let's be honest. Dogs are healing in any time, right? Like they're just amazing. And I think for me, ever since we've gone through the loss, not only have my dogs been incredibly healing for me, but all animals have been. I connect with animals anytime I can. Like and it could be anything. I now like love bees. I love anything. Like I'm like, oh my God, like this is so cool. And like connect. I think it's just a matter of, for me, connecting with life, connecting with something that's living, right? That you've made it through this incredible challenge of A, reproduction, and B, birth or hatching or whatever the case is. And then C, like you've lived, you've gotten to this point, and like how rare that is and how fragile life is. But focusing on dogs, our dogs, Winnie and Rocco, both amazing rescue dogs. I love them, dearly. And trust me, they gave us much needed cuddles when we were in a really dark space. And, I think about today, like, one of the things I've been focusing on lately is like, how am I not there for them right now because of like where I am in my grief process? And when I'm having pity parties on myself, I'm like, how can I be a better dog dad to them? Because they deserve to be happy. They're awesome. They're so supportive to us, like just in all ways possible. So how can I be more supportive to them too and give that back?
I want to commend you, Eric, on taking the time to kind of get to know nature also too. I think, I don't know, out of all 3 of us, I think I go camping the most. I don't know, Brian, do you go camping like that, B or Brian?
No.
Okay, cool.
So going to the beach count as camping? Is that
yes, it does. Yes, it does.
No.
You're building a fire on the beach. It counts too. But like, I have taken that time. Me and my wife have taken that time. Brad joined us last year, and I personally enjoy that time so much to just kind of unplug. And I go with a couple other another couple, and we just, like, me and my buddy Jason, we sit in the woods, literally have the fire. The fire goes out, and all you see is the sky. You forget how important the stars are,
right?
And you sit and you have your, like, I sit and have my own internal conversations with, Story, Beckham, Ari, and my Eli, my old dog, like Grandma, all these other, the family members that have passed away, and I'm having these, internal conversations. Now, mind you, I'm a couple in, but it's all good. But I'm having these moments out there, and I never thought about it, like, until like you brought it up. I'm like, holy shit! The
power of nature.
Yes, yeah. I just never really how much of a healing aspect of it is. Like sitting out in the woods, just quiet, unplugging. You might have a little music on, but like checking out the stars when there's like no light, and just you forget how bright they are, and you're like having that like. Not like, I keep saying like, I'm sorry. And I'm the radio guy. You keep having these conversations and stuff like that with, your family members, and it's just beautiful. I commend you. Thank you. If anyone gets a chance to do that, I would recommend that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, Eric, the other thing that I don't know much about, because again, I didn't necessarily go this route, but you talked about meditation too. Can you talk a little bit about that maybe some of our listeners might see that as an avenue to grief?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, it was a matter of turning within. It was, this kind of, you guys kind of touch on this early on when you were talking with your, with the initial question that like, it kind of throws a lot of your beliefs into flux, right? When something this awful happens, you start questioning everything. And so for me, I started looking at my own spirituality. I started looking at like, what feels better for me in this space, in my process. And so I found that, working through meditation has been very healing and has been very helpful because it forces me to turn within. There's a great quote. I want to say it was by Musashi, the great swordsman. It was like, I believe he said it's everything is within, nothing is without. So everything's within yourself. All of the answers are within there. So sometimes it's a matter of tapping into your own psyche and figuring out some of the answers to these big questions that you have and just quieting your mind down a little bit to just allow that to happen. The other thing that's been really helpful for me too is not just meditation, but guided meditation, journey sessions, sessions where I'm allowed to kind of explore and to connect with my daughter. And I can say that through meditation, through these practices, I've been able to have interactions with her, to speak with her, to see things, to see her as how she wants to appear to me, and that's given me a lot of peace. Doing that, working with nature to do so, working with the elements to do so, all of that's been very helpful to keep that connection with Hadley very, very much alive in my heart, and something that I can really tap into, particularly in dark times, particularly when the light around me seems almost impossible to see because there's just so much darkness. Sometimes by tapping into that, I can kind of push back that darkness, find the light again, and get back on the path and remain in this process.
Eric, I got a feeling that it's not by coincidence that you chose the T-shirt that you're wearing. Tell us about what you got there and what that shirt means to you.
Sure. So this is a shirt. I'll admit we bought these shirts from Etsy shortly after the loss. There's a great store. It's called Angels and Miracles. They have these baby loss rainbow T-shirts, and with this particular one, Hadley's name is down below. It's for baby loss and pregnancy loss and infant loss. And I like wearing that out of support for all of us who have endured pregnancy and infant loss. I'll admit that we had bought these initially after we lost her, but we've worn them so much that they started to wear out. So we bought like 3 more each. And so this is a brand new one.
On
just
deck.
to keep, just to keep ready to go.
I love
What's
it.
the name of the Etsy shop again?
I believe it is Angels and Miracles.
On Etsy, correct?
On Etsy, yeah. On Etsy. So shout out to them.
Absolutely. Shout out to them. And you
Cool,
probably see me looking at my other screen here.
Yep.
I'm Googling away right now.
Googling up, yep.
Brad's gonna
be
buy
in the
like
cart.
he's gonna buy like
everyone.
500 pink
No shame.
T-shirts. Yeah.
They have sweatshirts too. It's all good.
Fantastic. We've been talking to you for 58 minutes, and I would love to record another 58. Honestly, it's been amazing. Any other topics on your heart, or anything else that you wanted? We'll unfortunately start to wrap up here soon, and we'd love for you to obviously speak Hadley's name at the end. But any other topics or anything like that that were really pressing for you, or you want other guys to know?
So first off, I've had a great time, and I would be honored to join you guys anytime you want. So I guess what I'll do is I'll just, if it's okay, I'll circle back to the prompt that you all started with that question about the anger, because this is something that we've been exploring a lot. I've been exploring a lot. I've been sitting a lot with this idea. And I think one of the things that really when I explore, like, why am I angry? I think one of the things that all of us as dads, as men in Western culture have to deal with is that we are brought up, for better or for worse, whether consciously or subconsciously, as the protectors, as the providers for our relationships. And when we're unable to do that, when we're unable to control the situation, it throws our own identity into flux, and we don't know how to deal with that. And so the immediate reaction, my immediate reaction too, has been like, I don't have control. I'm pissed. I'm angry. And it's just not just, but like, it really is just our lack of control in that moment, right? We've lost the thing that we identify with, regardless of whether or not that's how we were brought up with. It's just innate in us as men in Western culture. So that's such a difficult thing to deal with. But at the root cause, or at the root of that anger, is really just deep sadness. So it's been so healing working with other dads to identify that, and then to also be able to say to our partners and our spouses, like, hey, when I'm angry, maybe I just need to have a timeout because I'm just sad. I'm deeply sad. And so sometimes it's a matter of like being able to keep that open line of communication with your partner. And for, my wife to just be like, look, I know you're mad. I recognize that I have nothing to do with this. That's okay. Allow me to express myself, but understand that it's just deep sadness that I'm holding in that moment. And then to just sit with that and try to see, like, why are you feeling that sadness? Why are you feeling that anger? And a lot of it comes down with communication problems with people saying stupid shit, people just, not being able to be there for you when you need it. And that's difficult, but, kind of like Brandon, you were saying earlier on, like that's where we have to stand up for ourselves. And that's where we have to tell people, like, that doesn't work for me. Right. And I think one of the things that I've been able to do through this process is to be able to advocate for myself, to look at the relationships in my life and say, okay, these are good relationships. These are healthy relationships. And maybe these aren't. Maybe these are toxic relationships. And instead of tolerating them, just releasing them. Because every relationship has a beginning and an end, and it doesn't have to be a lifetime. You can let those relationships go as soon as it no longer serves your highest good. So I think that's the lesson to be that I've learned so much. So
he's spitting.
I just marked I marked clips every 10 seconds there because he just kept going with
got bars. Jesus.
No, he's right. Everything you said is incredible. I know we say we're not therapists or doctors on this podcast, but that was about as close as I've heard.
You got a lawyer. You do have a lawyer now. So
yeah.
Eric, you're an impressive man, and
yes, sir.
What you and your wife have done to honor Hadley is incredible. So we're going to turn it to you to speak Hadley's name and sort of any final words here.
Okay. Well, in closing, I do this because I want to be there to support all of the dads out there. And I just want all of the dads out there to remember that you're not alone, that even in those darkest times, there is support. And to please reach out to one of us. You have an amazing support network here with these three gentlemen. And I've been honored to be here. So I do this in memory of my perfect little girl, Hadley Maeve Atstupenas. Thank you.
What a perfect way to end.
Perfect ending.
Beautiful.
Eric, I got a feeling we've built the beginning. This is beginning and ends of relationships. This is the beginning of a really awesome one. We hope for all of you.
I think you're going to have to be a seasonal guest of ours.
Absolutely. You've been incredible. So yeah. Bless you, man.
And thank you for everything you're doing for dads and guys. Yeah.
Thank you guys. Much love and gratitude. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Appreciate you.
Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Love you guys.
Love you guys.
Love you. If you valued from this content, we ask you to share this podcast with others that can equally benefit. Leave us a 5-star review on whichever platform you're listening to help us improve our outreach, and to follow Guys in Grief on Instagram and Facebook. Also, if you'd like to join us and share your story, email us at guysandgrief@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.